Okay, so now that you've learned a little bit about what producers, consumers, and decomposers are, let us take a look at how we create food chains and food webs. But first, let's go over what is a food chain. Okay, it's basically showing you how energy and matter move from one organism or one species. We're going to call this level to the next level. Okay, or the next species or organism. All right, so what you would do is you would write down, and you'd always kind of start off with the abiotic source of energy. So in this case, it's sunlight. This is our abiotic energy. And the producers are going to be the first thing to utilize that, okay? So we're going to just use a very simple example of producers, grass. So what you would do is draw an arrow to show that the energy is going to the next level, or the next, the first organism in this case are producers here with grass. Okay, and this is showing you that energy is originating from sunlight, but the arrow is pointing towards where it goes, which is the grass. Okay, and that grass is then going to be consumed. And maybe let's say if we're thinking of like pasture lands or something, we're going to have cows that are consuming them. So these are our primary consumers. All right, so again, the arrow is originating from the grass and is pointing in the direction of where it goes. Okay, now let's say that you've got these wolves that have been roaming around, kind of wreaking havoc, and they're going to eat your cows. So again, the arrows are pointing this way. In this case, in this particular food chain, the wolves would be considered secondary consumers. So in some cases, the wolves would probably be tertiary or quaternary. And none of these guys could get the materials that they need or the energy if they didn't have decomposers. So decomposers in the examples of bacteria or fungi are going to be getting raw material or waste from all of these levels. Okay, so a food chain is a simplified, all right, movement of energy and matter. Okay, so now we have to think about what is a food web. And a food web is just the sum total of all the species interactions in an ecosystem. The Arctic food web is going to be a really good example of this, but let's just do one quickly for, a forest. Okay, so you're going to start off ultimately with sunlight, all right? And many different types of producers are found in forests. So you have trees, you're gonna have grass, you're gonna have, bushes, shrubs, etc. Maybe these bushes and shrubs have berries or flowers. So all sorts of things. Basically, you're gonna show the arrows. Okay. And then the next level, the primary consumers, you might have things like squirrels, you might have deer, okay, you may have some insects, and these are going to be getting, of course, their food from multiple sources. So most organisms are going to be, diversifying where they're getting their food resources from. So you can see how there's lots of interconnections. Sometimes some organisms are only going to have one source, like the deer and the grass. So if you didn't have grass, think about which population would be most impacted. Okay? And then you have your secondary consumers. In this case, maybe you have some foxes, you've got snakes, okay? And, you might even have, so these are going to be eating, again, different sources, and sometimes they'll even eat from the primary consumers. right? So you may even have some omnivores, things like that. Okay, and then you've got your tertiary or even quaternary consumers. In this case, we're going to keep it simple. Maybe you just have some wolves and eagles that are mainly eating the secondary consumers, but they may even eat from the primary consumer level. And then all of these levels are going to give raw materials to the decomposers. So food webs are pretty fun, but it's also important to remember they show all the interactions, so they are much more complex than a food chain, which is just a simplified version of this. So I hope that was helpful to you guys.